Okay, hello everyone. So welcome to the 12th community call, API Manager community call session. So before we start, I just want to let you know this is the open session. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat, or after the session is over, we will have an open discussion where you guys can unmute and ask any questions. So let's kick it off. Today we will be talking about how to SSO to API Manager using an external IDP. The agenda is as follows. So first I'll give a brief overview of why would you need SSO and like why would you use an external IDP. Then I would like go over the configurations that are needed, and I also have prepared a small demo. So I will point the configurations in the demo as well, and so you guys can see what needs to be changed where. So let's start it off. So first of all, why would you need SSO? So one main reason that people would need SSO is that that you guys are accessing multiple apps day-to-day basis. Like for example, in your organizations, you might be having an email. Maybe you are using Gmail, or you might be using some kind of IDP to manage your users, and you will, in case of API Manager, you need to log into Publisher, Dev Portal, or maybe you might have other services running in Microsoft AD. So there might be several different logins and passwords your users need to keep in mind. So but using SSO, by using one single login, you can log into all these applications. And also then by using SSO and limiting only to one central location, you guys can manage that user base from that location. So if you want to cut off access to that user from at once to all these applications, maybe you can say, let's say when an employee leaves an organization, you can basically deactivate his account from that one location, and all these applications will be inaccessible for them. So this also has other benefits, such as giving a good user experience, and user also doesn't need to remember different login credentials. And also, why would you need an external IDP? So if you think about WSO2 API Manager, we also have user management capabilities, and you also can create users and give those credentials to the users to log in. However, in more often than not, you guys will, if you're a large organization, you will already be having some kind of identity provider that you use internally, maybe like Keycloak, OKTA, or something like that. So if you guys don't want to create user accounts for each and every user who wants to log into API Manager, if you connect via an external IDP, if you connect your identity provider as an external IDP, you can give the required permissions for those users to log into the API Manager. Okay. So I'll first state point-wise what are the configurations needed, so you guys can get an overall idea of what is needed, and then I will point the same configurations again in the demo. So first thing you would need is to create some sort of application in the external IDP side. So this can be some kind of OpenID connect-based application or a SAML-based application. So this is a common method used by the popular identity providers such as OKTA, Keycloak. So for example, in OKTA, you can create a OpenID or SAML-based application. Also, inside the external identity provider you are using, your users will have a certain profile. So you should contain some kind. You should contain a attribute or a claim that can be used to map into a role in API Manager side. So what will happen is when the user logs in, we can say that the user who has, let's say, an attribute called role, and if its value is subscriber, that user will be assigned a certain permission from the API Manager side. Also, after that, that is all from the external IDP side. Then you need to create a role and give it the required permissions in the API manager side. So the reason you do this is you need, in case you need to give some kind of custom permissions to the user. For example, you want to let him give him the ability to access both publisher and dev portal, or if you just want to give dev portal, so you can do this by creating your role from the API manager side and giving the required permissions. After that, you guys need to add an external IDP in the APIM side using the management console. So when you're adding this external IDP, you will have different configurations. If you are configuring a SAML-based app, so the configurations you took from your external IDP, you will need to enter here, and same with the OpenID Connect. And also, as I mentioned before, you need to map these claims, for example, the username and the role, which are mandatory. And if you want to map any other claims coming from the external IDP to the API manager side, you also can do this here. Also, it is mandatory to enable just-in-time provisioning. What this will do is when the user is being logged in for the first time, his details will be saved into the API manager user database. So this will allow him to log in. And also, finally, you guys need to configure the external IDP you created in the API manager in the APIM dev portal or published service provider. So that's it from the slides. I will dive into the demo right now. So first, I will go to OKTA. I will be using OKTA as an external IDP in this demo. I will start off with the application. So I have already created an application, and also I will be connecting this using OpenID Connect. So you can see that when you create an application in OKTA, you will get a screen like this. So some important credentials here are the login and logout redirect URLs. It should point to the API manager common auth, localhost common auth endpoint. And then you will, other important credentials are the client ID and the client secret. You will need to copy these, and when you're creating the external IDP in APIM side, you will need to enter these credentials. Next is the user profile. As I mentioned in the slides, you need to add an attribute that can be mapped to the role into the user profile. So I have added a custom role since there is no role attribute in this OKTA profile. This will contain a value that will be used to map the role in the API manager side. Also, in case of OKTA, we need to mention that in the ID token, to get this the role and username attribute. So if we go to the claims that are being sent in the ID token, I have configured two claims called WSO2 user and roles. So this needs to be explicitly defined as, by default, it will only have this subclaim. So when you define this in the claims of OKTA, this when the ID token is taken, it will contain the username and the role of that user. So this OKTA has this nice feature where you can view the ID token. So let's view the ID token. So we also need to mention the scopes. We are using the OpenID Connect and the profile scopes. So if you preview the token, you can see that you get the WSO2 user and the role of that user in the ID token. So the role is any. This is what I defined in my profile. If you haven't defined the claims, these two will not be available. That's it from Okta side. So let's go on to the API Manager. Okay, so first what we need to do is add an identity provider. So I have already created an identity provider. So in this, what would be important is the go under federated authenticators and decide what type of application you are configuring. If it's a SAML-based app, you can configure the SAML configurations. Since we are using OpenID Connect, so these are the configurations. So you can enable this, and then the client ID and secret you get from Okta side, you need to copy these configurations here. And the authorization endpoint URL, token endpoint URL, you can find in Okta documentation. So it is basically your Okta URL or to default V1 authorized. This default is the default key manager they are using, their key manager. So if you can see here the the authorization server. So this default is what we are calling. Then we have the callback URL, which should point to the common auth endpoint and the user info endpoint of Okta and the logout endpoint. And one other important attribute here is the user ID location. I have given as the user IDs found among the claims. If you can remember, in the ID token, we have a WSO2 user claim called WSO2 user. So I will be mapping that as the user ID. And also I will be passing the scope parameters of OpenID and profile. If you can remember, when you are previewing the token, we pass those parameters as well. So next is the claim configurations. So here in the basic claim configurations, you need to define a custom claim. Here, what we will do is as you can remember, in the profile, we created a claim called roles, and that we also saw that in the ID token, we will be mapping the value of that claim to the WSO2 role claim URL. And similarly, the WSO2 user claim, which also you saw in the ID token, will map it to claims display name. Also, we can specify here that to use WSO2 user, this claim as the user ID and this roles as the role. And under role configurations, I have mapped the value of this role that is coming from the identity provider, external IDP, to this local role I have created called Okta role. Yeah, and also we need to enable just-in-time provisioning. As I mentioned before, this will provision the user into the WSO2 API Manager user store. I have given prompt for consent, then it will ask the user for its consent. Otherwise, you can even provision it silently. So that's it from the external IDP part. I'll just quickly show the role I have created. If you can see, this is the Okta role. And if you look at the permissions, I have given all the permissions that are required to log into both dev portal and publisher. So this will allow the user to log into both. You can customize this any way you want. Then next, what we must do is map the identity provider we created into a service provider that we have, that is already getting created automatically. So if you go to edit this service provider that is already created and go to local and outbound authentication configuration, you can see there is an option to give a federated authentication. So here you select the IDP you created, and then it will use that. So similarly for publisher, you can do the same. Both publisher and dev portal is the same. Yeah, that's it from the configuration side. So now we can log in and see. So once you click sign in, this is I'm in the dev portal. Yeah, since we are already logged in to Okta, we will be automatically logged in. Let's log out first. So if we log in here, we will be redirected to the Okta homepage and we can enter Okta credentials. Then we'll be logged into the dev portal. So let's go to the publisher as well. So as you can see, we will be automatically logged into the publisher as well. Yeah. So I guess that's about it. One also a point I need to mention is when you're creating a role, a custom role, you need to map the scopes of that role in the admin portal. So that configuration can be seen here. So to all the roles that scopes you need to give this Okta role. Otherwise, the user will not be able to see the UI elements. Yeah, I guess that's about it. So let's move on to the question session. So do you have any questions? Yes, Miguel, it would be the same for the tenants as well.
So Dushan, so when configuring SSO, I think even for tenants, since they're using SaaS application, we don't have to configure this again for the tenants, right? So configuring single
Yes.
time will do the for all the tenants, right?
Yes, we do not need to configure it again. Once you configure it once, it will work for everyone.
Yeah.
Hey Dushan, question on a different topic.
Yeah.
For the API Gateway API Manager 2.6 version, if we want to configure or create our own dashboard on analytics, can we do that?
2.6. Rukshan, do you want to take this question?
Yeah. So actually in 260, the analytic dashboard is come from API Manager portal. That's in we don't have any dashboard uh, generation wizard in 260. So the possible solutions are you can take so with 260 Antix 260 actually we don't have the dashboard profile, but you can use SP260 sorry SP430 version. In there it supports dashboard, and from there you can generate custom widgets and come up with a custom dashboard, and you can in in order to customize those things, we have UI wizards to generate widgets. So India also you have multiple providers where you can mention from where you can query the data. So yeah, that's the way for 260.
So you're saying that we need to have what was that streaming integrator? Is that what we need to have?
No, it is it's SP. The full product name is streaming processor. Streaming
Oh, and that
processor.
is within analytics, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, so actually the product name is streaming processor, but we use the same version with some additional API Manager related features, and we build the analytics for analytics 260. But in India, we don't have this dashboard features. So in order to use dashboard feature, you have to use the streaming processor.
Okay, can you please send a document or a link where I can follow? I just want to create a custom dashboard. Let's say, you know, how many APIs and all that, just what we need.
Yeah, we will share.
And that dashboard will make calls or REST API calls automatically. When we create that dashboard, it makes calls to store and publisher portal, right? Or to the database as well, right?
Yeah, so in there you can define from where you are going to query the data. So you can use the database directly over the REST API. That's what the question, right?
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
And for store and publisher, can we? So right now we have. So right now we can create a user who can either go ahead and create an API or subscribe an API, right? But can we create a user who will just have read access? So just go. Just he probably will be able to log in, but do nothing. Can we just create a user with read access on 2.6?
You mean store and publisher portals or analytics
Yeah,
portal?
store and publisher. I mean, at least the publisher portal. So let's say we have a production environment. We don't want to give write access to the user, but we want to give read access. So is that possible?
In publisher, actually we don't have read access. We can't limited read access to the user, but in ISO or the web portal, we have the read only mode, but that is basically anonymous mode, because in ISO it allow you to view the APIs, unrestricted APIs, even without logging. So in publisher we don't have actually.
So store we can do read access in 2.6 in developer portal.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. If you can send the documents for these two, for custom dashboards and the read access for store portal, or the links, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So Dushan, we have a thread started in the Slack, right? About today, we have a thread started in the Slack regarding today community call, right? Because
Yes.
because in order to take this information to Deepak, we can share these things in there, right? So Deepak, you can go to the Slack and get it, right?
Yeah, okay. I'll wait for your update on the same message on the community call.
Okay, great.
And one suggestion, not a question, but a suggestion. In your community call, right? The time says 11:30 a.m. Okay, I think. Okay, I think you guys just updated it, right? Earlier it was 10:30 a.m. CST. Which was not correct. That would be correct if the daylight savings is off. But yeah, okay, now it's correct. Earlier it was 10:30 a.m. CST or 10:30 a.m. EST and 7:30 a.m. PST, which was not correct. Okay, looks like you got it fixed.
Okay, very well.
Thank you, Deepak, for the suggestion. We also have a quick question from Chasika. Yes, Chasika, this method would be the same. As far as I know, Facebook also uses OpenID Connect. So if you create a OAuth-based application in Facebook, it will provide you with the similar kind of details that we saw in OKTA. And we need to create an IDP in our side and follow the same process. Do you have any other questions? So since we are running out of time also, so let's end the call here today. If you have more questions, you feel free to post it on Slack. And also, so our next community call will be on the 6th of August. So we also have this form open to always give suggestions about suggestions for topics for the next community call. So please feel free to fill this form. And also follow us on Twitter at WSO2 API Manager. And if any of you guys are not on Slack, please join our Slack channel. And follow our YouTube channel, which is API Live. We will be sharing the community call recording there. And also we will share some links to other documentation where engineers have written to how to connect to other IDPs as well, like OKTA. The OKTA documentation is officially available in our WSO2 official docs, but in the YouTube description, we will share some links so you guys can try out other IDPs such as Keycloak. So I guess that's about it. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.